For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Shannon de Rehove. I'm at the ISS in Pretoria to speak to Lizette Lancaster about violence in South Africa. Violence in South Africa has captured both national and international media attention recently. President Jacob Zuma, however, believes the country is not inherently violent. What are your thoughts on this?
I think the president is partially correct. It's a complicated issue, but the majority of us are not violent. However, we have many violent societies. However, we are not as violent as 2 decades ago. Our murder rate has dropped by 50% since 1995. Our violent crime rate has decreased by over 30% in the past decade. So there is some good news. The problem is that it's still unacceptably high. So we are sitting with a violence rate that is far higher than many other countries in the world. For instance, our murder rate is 30.9 murders per 100,000 people, which is still 4.5 times higher than the average international murder rate of 6.9 per 100,000.
You state that South Africa is a far safer society than 10 years ago, but a lot more needs to be done before the country becomes as safe as many other societies in the world. What are some of the things that you think need to be done?
I think we need to recognize as society that the criminal justice system is not the solution to our problems. I think, we can ask for more police, we can ask for better police, but they cannot police every household in the country. Our problem with violence stems from the communities that we live in. We are mostly at risk from people that are known to us. So it is important that we start with our children and that we start interventions really early on. International research has shown that if we start interventions with children, even if it's something like 2 hours a week where children's in high-risk societies spent with social workers and early childhood development and help with homework and so forth, and involvement from parents, that it significantly decreases their risk of becoming violent and being victims of violence. So we need to start looking into community interventions, short-term and long-term, that could decrease our levels of violence. And unfortunately, it's not a quick fix. Often we think policing is the quick fix. But the truth is that we need long-term interventions, and every community is different. We need to study and understand violence patterns in every community. We need to understand the root causes of violence in every community and address them through the research that has been done. It's been on the table for a long time. We've got policy documents that are really good. It's a matter of implementing them and getting the whole community involved, and many state departments, not just the criminal justice system.
Who in South Africa is most risk of falling victim to violence, and under which circumstances do violent crimes occur?
Yes, violent crime is something that is quite an interesting phenomenon in our country, simply because 80% of violent crime gets perpetrated by people known to the victim. The most likely scenario of violence is that 2 males are sitting together, potentially drinking, and having an argument where an argument then fueled through alcohol or drugs end up in a murder or in an assault. Now, that is unfortunately for our society the most likely scenario. Only 16%, for instance, of all murders are perpetrated as part of another crime, like a robbery. So it means that most of our crimes actually gets perpetrated in social circumstances. For instance, almost 60% of women are killed by intimate partners. We know that 20% of murders are perpetrated by relatives, over 40% by friends. So this is not a problem of some stranger coming into your house and killing you or assaulting you. It's actually a case of us as society not being able to resolve conflict in a non-violent way. So the most likely victims are also the most likely perpetrators. They are mostly male, 6 times higher likelihood of a male being a victim of violence than a female. Females are most likely to be killed or assaulted by their intimate partners. And it is also the racial profile shows and that it's not a matter of race, that it's actually that certain of the majority races are not necessarily the ones at risk. It's more a socio-economic issue where communities which have large socio-economic challenges are the ones most at risk. Mm-hmm. So that's the pattern of violent crime in our country.
You mentioned that the actual amount of violence is much higher than that which is reported to the police. Why do people not always report violence to the police?
I think not reporting violence to the police is not something specific to South Africa. It's an international phenomena. You know, again, the type of scenario that I've painted about the most likely and at risk victim of violent crime means that you need to then go and report a crime perpetrated by a relative, an intimate partner or somebody that you know. So there are some risks involved when it comes to reporting crime, in that there might be a reprisal, there might be some stigmatizing around that, there might be some internal or family dynamics that might be at play that makes it difficult for you to report a crime. Furthermore, violent crime is traumatic, no matter who perpetrates it and under which circumstances. Very often people do not feel that they are comfortable reliving that crime and that trauma through reporting and going through the criminal justice system, especially for those that do not feel that they are confident in the police or that they can trust the police or the courts to resolve the issue. So the question is then often, what's the point of me reporting it? I want to move on with my life and I do not want to think about it again. And then, of course, we see that many people believe that the police are lazy, that the cases will not go anywhere, that there is just not that trust in the criminal justice system.
Thank you for your time. That was Lizette Lancaster of the ISS discussing whether South Africa is an inherently violent country.